Road. All right. Leslie, thank you for sharing this with us. My usual question is, why did you pick this recipe that you wanted to share? Because I'm always asking, what is something you make regularly or something you consider simple to share with people? Why did you pick this one?
Well, it is both of those things. I do make it fairly regularly because it is so versatile. As you said, you can pretty much put anything in it, so you can change the flavor just a little bit. There's basically like 2 ingredients that you change and it changes the whole profile. You can make them savory, you can make them sweet. And
savory.
Yes.
Give an example of savory.
Well, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with the cheddar garlic biscuits that they have at well, they have them everywhere now, but I think not Long John Silver's, Red Lobster made them popular. So they're basically like there's garlic and some Italian seasoning in them, and then you put cheese. So you can make them Italian cheesy style or like Southwest style to do savory. I've never made them with blue cheese, but I have made them with cheddar and garlic, and I have made them with like Italian blends of cheeses and then more like oregano and that. And so you could do it that way.
And you always do it actually as part of the baking process. It's never like, oh, I made this plain scone and then I add stuff to eat it.
Right. Yeah, it's all in the baking process.
Okay.
And then the savory ones are nice because then if you don't have a gluten-free baking mix, but you have gluten-free flour, you can just kind of whip some up.
Oh yeah, I should make myself some gluten-free ones, but I'll make both kinds. So let's go over the ingredient list of a basic scone, and then you can tell us what you're going to fancify it up with. And people will ask questions along the way. That's the joy of doing this. And if people don't want to be on the recording, they'll put it in the chat and then we'll read that to you. So
okay. So the basic ingredients that are in a regular scone is regular flour, eggs.
I've got everything laid out except flour. I'll have to grab it. Flour.
I had that same realization that I had my gluten-free flours out, but not my regular flour. So regular scones are basically butter, eggs, flour, a little bit of salt and baking powder, which is mostly what's in this too, but then you can adapt it. This is regular flour, but then you can also use gluten-free flour. And as I've realized, since my husband went gluten-free, there's a million different gluten-free flours. They are all different the way that they bake. And one of the things that I've figured out with like using coconut flour, which is lovely if you're not allergic to coconut and you like the flavor of coconut, it does come through in the baking. But coconut flour is really, really dry. So it kind of soaks up all the moisture in the recipe, and then it just makes it kind of disintegrate when you go to try to like take a bite of a baked good.
Very crumbly, yeah.
Yes, very, very crumbly. So what I like to do is I found this one, which is a measure for measure flour. So I make for my gluten-free ones for this recipe, I'm mixing this with the coconut flour that I got from the Amish grocery store. So then it'll kind of cut down on that effect that the coconut does.
Can you say again what that non-coconut flour was? You went by pretty
quick. Yes, I'm sorry. So the one that I happen to have is the King Arthur brand, but you can use any measure for measure. That's the important thing. Because a lot of times when you're baking gluten-free, I don't know if any of you have tried it before, but gluten-free baking is very, very challenging to get it to come out the same because the flours are so different chemically. So this one is, I believe this is a rice flour.
I like this one. I like the Red Mill one.
Yes.
And it's a 1-to-1. It has rice flour, white rice, brown rice, potato starch, sorghum flour, and tapioca for the pull together.
Nice. Yeah, the rice flour seems to do better for baking than some of the coconut flour, but I really like I'm a coconut fanatic, so I really like the flavor of the coconut. Another good one for that is really good for baking, but it's a little bit more expensive is almond flour. Almond flour is amazing. That's actually what my wedding cake was made out of. And like even the regular people that aren't gluten-free, just they loved it. So the almond flour has a better consistency than the coconut sometimes when you're trying to do gluten-free baking. Like it doesn't seem to sup up as much of the moisture, and it just has a little bit better texture.
You want to
So,
make sure
but-
it's refrigerated too, because it can go bad, I think.
Yes, thank you. Good point.
Once it's open though, if it's sealed closed, it seems to be fine. At least the one I have. I don't know.
Yeah,
I used to
yeah,
actually make
mine too.
almond flour. I have like an
Ooh.
industrial blender and you just grind up almonds,
nice.
you know. But if you want the white flour, you have to blanch them, you know, skin them. But if you don't care if it's got a little brown to it, then you just put the whole almond in there and bzz,
So, or what keeps it from turning into almond butter?
just like moisture.
Yeah, but almond butter is just ground up almonds. Just curious because.
But ground up raw almonds versus dry almonds.
Okay.
So if you want to make almond butter, you could just do the same thing, but add oil or and or water. We used to do that with dried almonds.
Hmm.
But yep. All right. I need my big baking pan. So we're gonna do two versions, right? I mean, are we gonna just
Yeah.
do a gluten-free one?
So I have another question about the flour. That
Yes.
first regular flour that you showed real quickly also said self-rising, which I know is different than regular flour.
That just
You're-
means it's got baking powder in it, right?
Oh yeah. The that's the regular flour. A lot of the white regular flour that you find in the grocery store is self-rising. So
Like
that
the
means it's,
all-purpose has what do you call it? Baking powder in it still, right? Let's see.
yeah,
Regular flour has nothing in it except wheat.
Right.
dirty wheat. So
But
that's
like-
why I'm getting a little confused with the recipe, because if you get self-rising, it already has certain ingredients in it that
right.
it's adding. So I'm just trying to get this recipe down accurately.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I think this might actually be the only regular white flour that I have right now.
Fred, I get to use the microplane to.
So
do boring.
basically the difference, if you're using the self-rising flour, then you don't have to put as much baking soda in it. Tell you what, or you talk for a minute. I'm gonna see if I have regular flour.
And
I've
then,
got some all-purpose flour here, and it, at least the all-purpose doesn't have, it's just, you know, flour. It doesn't have baking soda or baking powder in it. But self-rising flour does. The problem is unless you bake regularly, I wouldn't think you would want self-rising, because baking soda and baking powder does lose its strength over time.
Hmm.
And so if you don't bake regularly and your flour sits around, self-rising will lose its ability to rise, right? So,
Right.
yeah, it's better to buy. I think the all-purpose flour tends to be a finer flour, so you can use it for like bread and or pastry.
Right.
You can also make your own self-raising flour with 1 cup of regular flour, and you add 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 1/4 teaspoon of salt to it,
There you go.
because I don't have it, so I have to make it. 'Cause I'm lazy.
And I've had it before where I lost a thing of baking powder, and like a year later, I already opened. It definitely lost its strength. I had to like double up on the powder. So, all right.
that seems like a lot of baking. You said 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder per cup of flour? That sounds like a lot. But,
Yep, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder for 1 cup. Yep,
okay.
and then 1/4
What
teaspoon
are
of
we
salt.
doing, adding the dry ingredients now?
I just found it online.
We're still talking.
Okay.
So the two scones, Leslie, you wanted to make, you were picking, what were the flavors that you decided? And of course, it's what flavors everybody has, right?
I guess I don't know if it's what flavors everybody has, but the original recipe is made to be lemon poppy seed, but my husband doesn't like lemon, so I'm gonna do orange cranberry instead for the regular ones, which he won't actually eat, but those are the ones that I like. So that's the recipe that my mom always asked me to make. So for the regular ones are gonna be cranberry orange, and then the other ones are gonna be blueberry for gluten-free with fresh blueberries.
Wow. I was just like, I suppose
But
I
you
could
know,
do
on
that.
that, if you do fresh blueberries, then they are going to be more inclined to mold if you don't put them in the refrigerator. But if you use dried blueberries, they're a little bit more sustainable if you're not gonna refrigerate them.
I freeze them because I love frozen blueberries in the middle of winter. You can just take a couple
Oh,
of them and
yeah.
just like eat them like candy. It's just like a perfect
I do that in the summertime.
antioxidant winter food, like bam. So I had all the ingredients for this recipe, except I forgot to get tofu. And when I went to the store, I grew up eating tofu. They had an orange flavored tofu.
What?
Yeah, well,
I've never seen that.
yep.
You know, in terms of the tofu, I'm not walking very well, so I had to order mine through, delivered to the house. And I think it was Prime, so it was like a combination of Whole Foods and something anyway. So they did not have the silken one that you mentioned. It wasn't on the list. So I just got soft tofu, thinking that what I would do is I'd put it in the blender and make it, creamy.
Yeah.
And I thought that would work,
Well, you can just also mush it. It just tends to be a little more granular. I mean,
What do you think, Leslie? You think that's okay?
Well, it's gonna have to be okay because I couldn't find the silken tofu. And I went to 2 different grocery stores around here, one which used to sell it and now they don't. So I found the softest tofu I could find, which is firm. So it's gonna be interesting. But usually as long as you have the soft tofu, it's okay. And a lot of tofu companies, I don't know what experience you guys have with tofu, but I found a lot of the different tofu companies, like one company's idea of firm is actually soft, but then another company's idea of extra firm.
that sounds
still
like
kinda
pant
soft.
sizes.
I know, I was like, this sounds dirty, but no, like there's a difference. And this particular company, they call it firm, but it's actually pretty soft. So
Growing up, we used to make tofu cheesecake. You basically get tofu and you put it in the blender with any flavor, and then you pour that into graham cracker crust and let it firm up in the fridge. So it sounds like this is very similar. You're making like a flavored creamy something for the center of the
Yes.
scone. All right.
yeah, basically you want, like, as long as you can get, you're gonna blend the tofu with the milk anyway, which definitely works better in like a blender or a food processor. So you're gonna blend the tofu and the liquids together. So as long as it can still come out creamy, which most companies that do like a soft tofu, you can get it. The silken has a little bit better texture and it's actually a little bit cheaper if you can find it, which I haven't been able to. So, or the one that Or showed is actually, did you get that at like an Asian grocery store?
Yeah, an international grocery. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. If you can find an international grocery store around you, they have like the best tofu and it's all really well priced, and they always have silken tofu there. That's where I normally go, but I didn't have time to get over there this
Although
week.
it says proudly made in the USA, so
Right. Oh
I
yeah.
usually get my silken tofu from the co-op.
Yes. Yeah, that's another good place. We don't have a co-op, so
So the people outside the US, is it hard to get tofu in your area? You can put it in the chat or let us know. What are
Well, I know it must not be hard in Asian stores because when you go into the Asian supermarkets, oh my God, there's so much variety.
right.
yeah. So all right, let's get baking.
All right. Well, we're gonna start with the dry ingredients. So, and I did find some not self-rising flour, but it's whole wheat, whole wheat has a little bit different issues. So I'm gonna actually mix my whole wheat with the sorry, wrong one. With the self-rising flour,
We're doing
Which
a
is-
gluten-free one first. So we
I'm
don't
making,
cross-contaminate, right?
oh, you want to do the gluten-free one first? Okay,
Well, it's properly, so you don't have cross-contamination.
right. All right, so for the gluten-free one, you're gonna take,
I got ye old sifter finally. People always
Ah,
do
there you
when we're
go.
baking and I didn't have a sifter.
so if you're doing mixing two different kinds of gluten-free flour, a sifter is a great idea. And I gotta grab something here.
I've got almond flour blend. Well, let's see what's in here. So the almond flour blend has almond flour, brown rice flour, white rice flour, potato starch, and tapioca. So that's a good mix. I really like using this for making meringues.
Oh, yeah,
I never made them look good, but I always made them taste good.
there you go. All right, so you're gonna put in your 2 cups of flour and sift it together with the baking soda and the,
Let's see. Cup of flour. Then I've got, it says 1 tablespoon baking soda.
yep.
Oh, baking soda or powder? Powder, baking powder. See, I said soda, watch me.
Yeah,
And what combination of flours did you do, Leslie? Did you mix the coconut and,
I did half and half. So I did half of this. I did half of this gluten-free one. And then half of this coconut one. Sorry, my husband did not wash the dishes.
And
so I-
obviously this is very forgiving because we're not weighing anything.
Right,
We've had bakers in the past that you have to weigh it, otherwise.
yeah, you don't need to weigh it as much as like measuring helps.
All right, so 2 cups of flour, 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and then it says 1 teaspoon of salt. Now, what are some other options besides butter?
Okay, so at this stage you have your, and I did just wash my hands. So at this stage you have your flour and your sugar and your baking powder. Now you got me wanting to say baking soda. And your so all of your dry ingredients are in here, except for the butter, which technically the butter is not really a dry ingredient per se, but it goes in with the dry ingredients.
how much sugar? Because a lot of times sugar isn't considered a dry either, but that's because they always
Right.
create sugar and butter together.
Yes, very good point, because usually sugar is in with like the eggs and the butter. So in this recipe, the sugar goes in with the dry ingredients, and then it's a half a cup of sugar. You can go less on the sugar. I wouldn't go less than a 1/4 cup of sugar. Unless
Me,
you, if
I
you're
always
doing the
go
savory
more.
ones, you don't have as much sugar, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, this
You
seems
even
like
have
the
that-
least amount of sugar I've ever seen in like a,
Yeah.
all right.
So would you put any sugar in a savory?
In the savory ones, there's still a certain amount of the chemical process, I guess, that goes on. So
For the rising process, yeah.
yeah. So with the savory ones, I think I usually only do like a 1/4 cup or slightly less than a 1/4 cup. Because you still want it to have like a faint sweetness, just to, I don't know. I guess it's up to you how sweet you like stuff. If you like sweet and savory, then you're gonna have more sugar. But I wouldn't go
For
less.
all that bragging of my sifter, I didn't use it. Ah,
All right. Are we ready for the butter?
what other options can we use besides butter? If you're
Okay. Oh,
is-
so options
some
besides
oil, right?
butter, you can use applesauce. And supposedly you can use like a banana, like mushed fruit, basically. The problem with bananas, I've had mixed results with using those as egg substitutes. Applesauce does work really well in the scone recipe, but then you also are going to give it an apple flavor. So if I do use applesauce, then I usually go like apple cinnamon scones, maybe with some walnuts or something.
Nice.
And then the apple ones, if you use applesauce instead of butter in them, then they'll be a little, I don't know why, but they come out a little bit more spongy, like springy. Then the butter ones are more crumbly. So that's just a texture difference that I've noticed. And then if you have people that are diabetic or you're not someone that does sugar, you can maybe use something else for the sugar. I haven't really mastered what the proportions are though, but I know you can use stevia, and you might be able to use, I think you can use monk fruit as well, but I don't know what the ratios are for, like, 2 cups of sugar. There's probably a chart somewhere online, I would imagine.
Right. All right. So how do you do the butter? The butter, is it just room temperature or do you melt it?
Okay, the butter, sorry, I'm trying to get this. So the butter is, I've had mine sitting out just for like an hour. You want it to be, especially with it being as hot as it is nowadays, you want it to be like kind of firm, because otherwise it's just going to be a mess when you go to cut it. But you also want it to be like, you want to be able to cut it, so you don't want it to be too hard. So what I do is, then it sticks together, is cut it into little tiny squares.
So this is very much like you would do for like a pie crust or something, where you're trying to keep it
Yeah.
still cool.
That's
crumble.
actually a perfect description, or because it does it in it with the texture with the flour, it's going to be kind of crumbly. Like, you're going to be able to feel the clumps of butter in it, but you want them to be tiny clumps ultimately. So, and then there's a great device that I have that I'm going to use to blend this into the flour. All right. All right.
Now,
And
is the sugar in there, in with the flour already?
yep, the sugar, you should have your sugar, flour, baking powder, and salt all sifted into the bowl and kind of mixed up together before you put the butter in. So, or people, let me know when you're ready with the, so I'm gonna put that up for a second.
I'm ready.
All right.
Now, have you ever used oil instead because you didn't have butter?
I have used oil. I've used coconut oil before. Coconut oil gets a little, it makes it a very satiny texture actually, because it's coconut oil and just has that smooth texture, but it doesn't really do the like nice clumps, like, let me see if I can zoom in on this. Come on here. So with this, you can see it's
Yeah,
kind
very
of
similar to pie crust. Yeah.
Yeah, it is very similar to pie crust, which is probably why this device,
We're just making mini pies is what we're making.
kind of, yeah. So this thing, have you guys ever seen one of these? Do you have one? It's a pastry cutter, I think, something like that. So this thing is great for just getting that butter in there.
Using a pastry cutter.
I'm
using a pastry cutter.
Hey, nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
it works really
It
well.
blends together real well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if you don't have this, you can also use like a slotted spoon I've used before. My mom gave me this thing because I make that many scones for her, but you can use a slotted spoon or you can use like a big fork or I guess a regular size fork. It'll just take you longer. So, but then, once you have it this nice,
I used to have one and I never used it except to chop up herbs. Like I would use it to chop up herbs, and then I don't know. I haven't seen it in ages. All right. Add that to the list.
so, or let me see yours. How's your,
Pastry cutter,
yeah, perfect. Looking good. All right.
crumbly.
Once you have that done, you can do the liquid part.
So you call that a pastry cutter, correct?
I believe that's what someone told me it was. I never knew what it was called, and then someone was in my kitchen with me, and they told me.
We missed seeing the pastry cutter and now are having a debate what it looks like. Would you mind holding it up for the camera?
Oh, yeah.
That,
That's the pastry cutter?
yeah, it's for cutting in butter into like biscuit.
Oh.
Yeah. It works really well. See, then you could just peel it off like that, and then turns it into this sort of a fine powder.
Oh, should the
Or
oven be
it's very-
on?
It's very similar. It has a very similar texture to the pie crust, like Or was saying.
Hey, Leslie, should the oven be on?
Yes, I was gonna say that earlier.
I always forget.
Don't forget to preheat your ovens to 400. So
400 Fahrenheit.
ideally, yeah, 400 Fahrenheit. Sorry, I forgot international. Yeah, ideally you want to turn that on before you start getting before you start cutting the butter in. And if you're like me, don't forget to check your oven and make sure you're not storing anything in there, because I had couch surfers that almost burned down the kitchen. They didn't realize that's where I keep all of my pots and pans.
Yeah, I had that happen before too.
Yep.
But like a plastic cutting board that was in the oven
Oh
that I
no.
didn't know about.
Oh no.
My rule is nothing that cannot take the heat. So I've turned on my oven to 400 and had big, huge cast iron skillets in there, which
Yeah.
are just cumbersome to get out, but nothing melted. Because I've learned the hard way.
That's like my uncle. My uncle came to cook something, and I don't know. Somehow they left something of plastic on the oven, and that was burning.
That
Big
doesn't
mess
smell-
because the plastic goes down on the, on the shelf grill in the oven. It's a big mess.
Oh yeah. I hate cleaning my oven anyway on a normal day. So it's like, that's a bad thing. But
Look up something. Oh, let me find it. What they use for professional ovens. It's just called Easy Off. That's what they use in professional ovens, and you just pour it on everything and let it set for a while, and then everything comes right off.
But it's very caustic and toxic.
Yeah,
though.
you want to wear a
Yes,
mask and gloves
yeah.
when you're doing it.
It's a sodium hydroxide, basically, I think.
all right. All right. So, or you're doing your orange zest.
Oh yeah, Fred, look, I'm finally using the microplane or whatever.
Oh,
microplane.
nice. All right. So the orange zest or lemon zest, whatever kind you're making, you can personalize it. That's going to go in with the dry ingredients. So you can just kind of, and I've even like done my zest over the thing.
And of course, you don't have to use zest. Probably you could just use the little flavored bottle.
Yeah, you can use, if you want to use a different, yeah, the recipe calls for like 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, but if you want to make a different kind, like I've used cinnamon extract or almond extract before. So you can use any of those flavors, just follow the proportions. So
I
instead
really
of,
don't like orange extract.
oh, okay.
Like that's why I'm doing a real here.
Well, let me grab my orange and I'll extract with you.
I have a tip. I'm one of those that buys lemons, oranges, and limes, and I leave them on the counter until they look like this and they're hard. So what I do is I take them right away and
Okay,
I
I've got
zest
like
them
a-
into my freezer container. And then I juice them and put all the juice in my freezer.
Nice.
It works so well.
All right. Yeah, I've got my freezer, my fridge right now is from the last few cooking shows. I've got all the scrap veggie bits. And normally I'd make some veggie broth, but it's been too hot. I've been using it.
It's kind of a picky, but I actually have a microplane zester that's kind of half round that's specially designed for zesting.
Ooh. So it's like curved for.
It's curved, so your contact with the fruit is, just where, small as opposed to a flat one.
All right.
All right. So, or you did the orange zest for your gluten-free ones. I'm doing blueberries.
I probably should add more than just that. I mean, it was only the one orange.
Leslie, I don't have an orange, so I thought I would add orange marmalade. It's not real sweet, orange
Yeah.
marmalade. So how much do you think I should order? Put in a half a cup or?
Probably
How much
around a
milk
fourth
do we
a
put
cup.
in? This is a third of a cup of milk, so
Oh,
Right.
so
I'd
maybe
say like a fourth of a cup, because that's about.
okay,
I'm gonna put about a fourth a cup of blueberries in,
okay.
but I gotta chop them.
I don't want to waste my blueberries.
Yeah.
Save them.
Sneaking them in the baked goods is the only way I can get the husband to eat them,
Right. Oh, more for you.
Right.
So the combination you're doing is orange cranberry. Is it fresh cranberry or dried cranberries?
Dried cranberries. So, because cranberries, as you all may know from like Thanksgiving, cranberries are very tart when they're raw. So you want the dried cranberries, which
They've got sugar in them, the dried ones.
yeah, they have a little bit of sugar. And like I thought I had some regular cranberries from Ocean Spray, but I just have this mix. So I'm gonna pull the dried cranberries
That'll take
out of
forever.
this. So
I suppose you could just add the nuts to it.
I do
Yeah.
that with packages of nuts. If it calls for almond, I'm yanking out the almonds and I have to leave behind, like the cashews or the pistachios. I've done that so many times.
2 tablespoons of
yep, like darn, I'm out of that. Wait, what has that in it? That'll work. All right,
That's what's so nice about this recipe. It is for, you can put your basic and then you just add whatever flavors you want.
yeah.
I'm just going to use currants, but
That's why I
Oh,
say
that's
if
a
you-
good.
if
That's
you
a
were in
nice.
the- Right, if you're in the UK, they would be using currants. I was just gonna say.
I was gonna, yeah.
I don't have any tofu though, so I just thought I might put 2/3 cup of milk or something.
Let's see.
The tofu is actually a substitute for the eggs. So if you're not,
Oh,
you can just add.
add 1 egg.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, I would say you want to go 2 eggs because it's 6 ounces of tofu, and usually about 3 ounces of tofu is a substitution for an egg. So
Oh, okay.
yeah, yours will be more like the traditional British ones.
Yes, I've made scones before with no eggs at all, just the butter, but yeah, I'll try it with 2 eggs this time. Yeah, thanks.
I mean, I suppose you could do it without the eggs. It would just be more like shortbread. Like they wouldn't rise as much.
And I'm making mine with apricot and chocolate chips.
This is
That's
great. Everybody's a different flavor. I love it.
Yeah, I've done a raspberry white chocolate chip before. Is really good. Or
Wait a second. There's no such thing as a white chocolate chip.
well, white chocolate. Okay.
Just kidding. That's the whole debate where there's no chocolate in chocolate, white chocolate.
Oh yeah, I got you.
But so yeah, you were some options poppy seeds, lemon zest, cranberry, orange zest, a dash of cardamom. Ooh. Now I want to add, but I don't think orange and cardamom would taste phenomenal together. Blueberry, cherries, or raspberries, diced dried apple bits and cinnamon, or applesauce instead of
Now
butter.
that's if you're doing the applesauce instead of the.
Oh,
All right.
So,
treacle scones are good.
so now I have to add milk to this, right?
All right. So now what you're gonna do. I'm not an Instagrammer, can you tell? I'm trying to, let's see, where. See if you can. Well, y'all know what a blender looks like. I can't quite position the camera so that to face my blender, but basically what we're gonna do is this is another place where you can do a variation. Uh-oh. So you want
So this is for
about
the
a
tofu.
third a cup of milk.
So in the blender, we're putting the tofu in the milk.
Yep.
Where'd my cup go?
All right. So I got this is gonna go in my blender.
Third of a cup.
So I got milk in my blender.
Now,
On the other side.
And then now this is another place with the substitution. So if you're dairy free, you can use soy milk, you can use almond milk, you can use coconut milk, anything that has a milk texture.
there you go.
So like my husband's gluten-free, but he's also mildly allergic to soy. So a lot of times I use oat milk, which you have to watch. Some of the most of the oat milk is gluten-free that I've seen, but I think there might be some companies where it's not. So you want to just watch labels if that's something that you're sensitive to. So, and then we got vanilla.
Wait, how much vanilla?
Two
teaspoons.
teaspoons.
Oh,
I've lost my teaspoon.
Usually you can use the cap for a teaspoon. Or was it
Ah.
half a teaspoon?
I washed it. All right.
It matters your size. If you have a big container, I don't know. I've noticed that the caps, they actually have them sized. If it's a big container, it's 1 teaspoon. If it's a small container, it's a half a teaspoon.
Okay, so you're gonna put your vanilla in with the milk.
And put the tofu in.
Yes. And be careful when you open the tofu because it's packed in water most of the time and it can squirt at you.
And
So
don't
I'm gonna
bring
open my
the
tofu
water
over the
out,
sink.
obviously, huh? But mine. Yeah, I debated for a few minutes, but I decided I was going to make an orange flavor. So yeah, this tofu is yellow. It's turmeric to color it. I'm going to taste it real quick here.
And then most of these tofu companies like packages like this are 12 ounces, which this one's 14 ounces. So the silken one is usually 12 ounces. So the silken one, since you're using, I believe it's 6 ounces of tofu.
Yep.
So
Just use
the
a half a
12
container.
ounce container, then, obviously you could just cut it in half, but since mine is a little bit more than 12 ounces, I'm going to take slightly less than half.
I think I'm just going to put the whole thing in, and then I'll use the leftover as a pudding.
There you go. You can actually blend it with banana and it makes a lovely pudding.
So I don't, because mine's orange flavored tofu already, so I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd
See,
eat
this
that plain.
This has some of the texture of very similar texture as the soft tofu, but the difference in the silken is the way that it pulls apart. It's not so like jaggedy when you pull it apart. It just comes apart in like smooth little. So this will work, but you really want the silken tofu if you can find it.
So do you think I can just take it and squeeze it in there?
Yep, that's exactly.
Okay.
Just drain the
exactly
water.
what I did. I just kind of,
One trick you can do with
It
those
squeezes real
containers,
easy.
yeah.
Barbara, one trick you can do with those containers is you just put a slit on one edge and flip it upside down. And if you let it set for like 30 minutes, it will become really, really dry. And I use that when I bake tofu.
Oh, okay.
So I want it really dry because then I marinate it and it soaks that all up in. All right, so we all ready to do some blending.
Yep. All right. We're gonna blend.
I'm gonna end up with some pudding.
Yeah. Basically, you want it to be about the texture of like yogurt or like Greek yogurt. Pretty thick.
Now we didn't put any sugar in this part.
No, there's no sugar in that part. And then,
Oh, it actually tastes amazing.
yeah,
You,
it's
I would
nice
think
with the vanilla.
it actually has a.
So,
It is actually
like this is
slightly
a little
sweet.
bit, since I didn't use the silken tofu, you can see some like lumps in there. But it'll still blend up okay. And like I think the British would probably tell you you want some lumps in there anyway. So yeah. So then,
Take your lumps with life.
right, I'm just gonna pour the wet ingredients in with the dry ingredients. And I guess you could use one of those mixer things if you wanted to, but I never do. I just have my trusty slotted spoon and kind of fold it in like you do with a lot of baking.
Make sure I only put half of it in because I made the whole
Yeah.
tofu packet. I like the texture of this. Like,
Yeah, it has the gluten-free batter's a little bit harder to work because it's so dry with some of the gluten-free flours, but basically you want to work it until you can get it into like a put it into a like a big ball of dough that you could press down.
and I suppose you don't want to overwork it.
No, but with the gluten-free one, like mine is still very just, it almost looks like it needs more moisture.
I started making a mistake I've done in the past where I do it on the top of the stove and the stove's starting to get warm.
Oh yeah.
I know you don't want that butter to get warm.
Right.
All right.
Although in the gluten-free case, it'd probably help it stay together better because this is, and a lot of
Well, I'm
times,
doing it with my hand and it's pretty sticky.
yeah. Yeah, when it gets to a certain point, it's almost better just to do it with your hand. Obviously, wash your hands first.
So you say that you do it with your hand and then kind of like try to put it into a ball.
Yeah.
Once
I
you
mean,
get-
it'd be
once
pretty
it's
hard
like
to
one
roll
big
this out.
ball, you're
It's so
good?
sticky.
Yeah, one big ball, you're good. Or with the gluten-free one, if it's being sticky, you can always just go cookie style and just roll it into balls.
Oh, well, I'm not doing the gluten-free, I'm doing the regular and it's so sticky, my goodness.
Yeah, the regular one's a way stickier at this stage than this one. All right.
So I don't know what to do with it. I mean, after it's so sticky like that, try to get it into a ball and then put it in the refrigerator.
With the regular one, if you're doing the regular one, you might want to put it in the fridge for just a little bit.
Yeah.
And then that'll
It's
help
really
it.
sticky. I don't think I can roll it out just being too sticky unless I add more flour to it.
Right. Yeah, and see the gluten one is still kind of like, it's getting there. Yeah, very crumbly. So we'll see how this goes with the.
Oh, it tastes pretty good. Oh,
Yeah.
even though it's not even cooked good.
So I guess grease a flat pan and then we're just laying them. Well, how do we roll them out on the pan?
That's what I'm trying to see if my batter is sticky enough to do. Yeah, this is gonna work. All right. Yeah.
I wonder if
So-
I could do 2 pans.
Where'd you go? I remember I'm doing the gluten-free ones now, so I have this gluten-free flour,
Yeah, me too.
and you want to sprinkle a surface. Think like you're making Christmas
My-
cookies or shortbread.
Mine's super yellow because the tofu was yellow colored.
Yeah, I bet.
It was. All right.
All right.
Now, how do we shape them to go on the?
So I like to have my big ball here, which I don't know if I can do quite the big ball because these are gluten-free and they don't. It wants to crumble. But we'll try this.
Mine's good. Mine's gluten free, but
All right.
ended up pretty nice big ball.
All right. So you want it on the surface.
Flour to surface.
Yeah, flour the surface.
I need to get some flour.
And then I like to press it out into a square. Okay. And then you're gonna have your yam.
How thick do you want it?
So you want this. This is probably, well, it depends if you want them or if you want them crunchier, then you can press it out thinner. If you want them just kind of crispy on the outside and more like crumbly on the inside, this is probably good. This is about not quite an inch. So you want it like that.
Oh, it's pretty thick, yeah.
Yeah, so you want it kind of thick, like thicker than a cookie would be, I guess. And then you got your oven. It is preheated. Got your cookie sheet. You want to grease your cookie sheet. If your grease isn't a piece of crap like mine, it doesn't want to spray.
I guess I don't need 2 pans. I guess the other pan will be for the other batch. For some reason, I was thinking this would be really thin and I'd need 2 pans.
Right. All right. So let's see if I can do this. Well, all right. So you have those, and they should come up fairly easily. But you're still, especially with the gluten-free ones, you're gonna want to be careful when you go to pull them up because they'll probably try to fall apart. And you want a knife that's long enough to go all the way across, so you're not like sawing through it, because then they'll fall apart more.
Okay.
You just kind of cut them in an X. And then cut them in an X again. And then at this point, you have 8. So you can continue cutting them to make smaller ones. Just you want to cut them in half. Or you can have full-size ones like that one. See, it's that thick. So
Now, when you set them on the pan, does it matter if you put flour side down or up?
it really doesn't. I usually put flour side down, I guess.
I'm going to try a couple different sizes here.
Yeah. Yeah, and basically, you know, if they're smaller, they're gonna get
It's
crispy.
really absorbed all the flour underneath anyway, so.
Right, yeah. So we'll do, I guess for this batch, we'll do half of them full size and half of them not size.
Yeah, some of them are, it's interesting. Some of them completely stay together and then some of them are like trying to come
Mhm.
apart when I pick them up.
Yeah. So then you just want to rearrange them. You want them to have, sorry, I'm trying to not touch my computer and get it all sticky.
I wonder if the cooking shows have special computers. No.
They have a crew.
How far apart?
You
on
want to
here-
put them at least like that far apart, like however you can Jenga them on there.
So I
is
guess I
good.
do need 2 pans because I don't.
Because
think
they will, especially like the softer they are when they're going on there. Like whoever was doing the regular ones, it said they're gooey. You know, the gooier they are when they go on there, the more they're gonna spread out. But these won't spread out too much. But
Leia's look perfect.
Thank you.
Wow. Wow.
Hi, can you hear me? I don't.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there's mine. I did the regular. I'm from Wisconsin, so I'm
hey,
pro,
Leah,
pro egg and milk. Sorry.
I'm glad you joined us, girl.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw mine in because, as people that know, it's best it's cold when it hits the heat. So, okay, girl, I'm gonna throw them in.
For how long?
Here they are.
It's like a 20-minute thing, probably.
that they're gonna bake for 15 minutes at 400 degrees.
Okay, what about you? How long do you think they'll bake at 350?
I don't know. I never make them at 350.
Well, I'll tell you something. I got a new oven. It doesn't, it's not a new to me, but not new. And there was no instruction manual. And I tried to put it to 400, but then it said broil. So I said, oh, forget it. I'm going back to 350.
So good. Yeah. I would say if you're doing 350, they'll take a little bit long. Maybe try 17 minutes and then see what they look like.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Basically, it's like anything in baking. You want them to be like, you know, sort of golden brown, or, you know, like a light brown.
You know, the last time I made scones, which was about a year ago, I put it into just a big round and put it in the oven. And then when it came out, then I, you know, sliced it, you know, spoke-wise.
Oh, so you just put the whole pan, filled the whole pan?
No, I made a round something or other, and then, you know, just a round thing of dough, and I baked it like that.
That's
Then,
how I
when it
make
came
my
out,
scones
I
too.
sliced it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that's the cookbook that I had. That's what they said to do, so that's how I did it.
That makes
That
sense.
turned out
though.
fine.
Yeah, that makes sense because Leah, when you made the shortbread before, it's very similar to the scone making process, and I think that's how they make some like
Oh, yeah,
bread that is they make a big loaf and then they cut it.
yeah. I do mine round and cut it in pie shapes. It's just easier. I don't know, but yeah.
That would probably work with this recipe as well.
My uncle in the south of England makes his scones in sort of a big loaf and then cuts it into triangles.
Yeah.
The look there.
Yeah, that's what I did too. I also cut my butter, it's frozen. And I told Leslie, I'm like, sometimes I'll even put the bowl back in the freezer. Because the key, it's
Very
like
similar to
anything-
making a pie
bowl.
crust. Yeah.
As if I have enough room in my freezer to do that.
Yeah.
I'm there. I'm
Yeah.
right there with you. All right. So that was good.
Well, if
I
you
just realized I did make
oh, sorry.
enough of this tofu. I could make another batch.
So, what did you do about all that corn that you had a week ago?
I gave it all away.
Oh, you did? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good for you.
All right, you can continue making another batch of gluten-free, but I think we've covered everything. I mean, gluten one. How is the gluten one any different than the gluten-free one?
Gluten-free one's a little bit crumblier because of the way the flour is.
So I have a quick question about the substitution of tofu for the egg. Is that because people have egg allergies?
That's
We've got
nice.
someone with really loud
No,
sound.
vegans aren't gonna have eggs. It's her,
How
if you want it
Well,
vegan, you
vegans
just,
aren't gonna have milk, so they'd be substituting the milk with soy milk or almond.
right, but the,
And then the
the
tofu for
tofu,
the eggs.
they would use the tofu instead of egg to make it vegan.
And then the applesauce for the butter, because there's a whole lot of non-vegan ingredients in it.
Yeah, yeah, they'd have to make all that combination.
Put it in the bag.
Have
So, Leslie,
Yeah,
have
let's
you
see.
made it?
Stand up and show me the blue t-shirt. No, put that one
Is that
down.
Maureen?
I want to see the blue t-shirt.
What's the
I
blue
think
t-shirt?
it's
Oh, really? I want to see the blue t-shirt.
Yeah, I do
One-
too.
1 second, everybody. Let's go ahead and wrap up the recording with some final questions, and then we can make another batch and take a picture of our final. Unless we want to go through, because it doesn't sound like, you know, gluten-free versus gluten is that much different.
No, not really. It's basically just the differences in the flour. So a little bit more challenging. The other ones are stickier, so they're a lot easier to roll out and put together.
So I do have another question about the ingredients, because they seem so interchangeable. You say your husband's gluten intolerant as well as soy intolerant. So if you do a gluten-free, what would you substitute? Well, he could probably do eggs that you wouldn't have to do the tofu in a gluten-free.
He's yeah, I can do eggs for him. He's not super intolerant of soy, so I can use, what I usually do is I could use the tofu for the recipe, but then I use like almond milk or cashew milk, one of the nut milks, something that's not soy milk. So coconut milk is very lovely in these. I just didn't have any on hand.
Yeah, coconut milk's nice and creamy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, you can do the applesauce one where you're not doing eggs or milk, you're just using applesauce instead.
Right.
But then of course it tastes like apples.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you definitely get the flavor of the applesauce. So
I was interested to see it rolling on the blender. I have never seen a scone come out of a blender before. And also nobody rolled them out. You don't roll them out.
And nobody rolled them out. Yeah.
There was not a rolling pin to be seen.
yeah, I have rolled them out before if I've left them in the freezer for too long, because they're too mushy, but then you put them in the fridge and you forget about them, and then you're like, oh, now it's too hard. And mostly I just press them out. But
yeah,
I used to work at one of those bakeries in the mall that pressed out the big cookies to decorate for people's birthdays. So I'm just used to pressing stuff out. And the scones are definitely easier to press out than the big cookies. That's for sure. So
how long are they in the oven?
Huh?
How long do you cook them, bake them? 20 minutes, did you say?
For 15 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit.
I'm dying to see them coming out.
Yeah,
Can you see that? Or
mine got 8 minutes.
I want them to be like this height. So do you split them and have the cream and the jam? Like the British?
Yeah, how do you serve them?
That's how you serve them. Oh.
No, I was like, how does Leslie serve?
Usually serve them with a little bit of, I don't have fresh cream. I'm not fancy like the British. But I usually serve them with like a little bit of butter.
I could serve them with the extra tofu.
Good. And some strawberries.
I mean,
I'm
it's
sure.
like, it's very creamy.
Yeah,
like-
I'm sure you've got
This is like
strawberries. as
English
well.
pudding, very thick and creamy.
Yep,
Yeah, it is very much like a pudding.
double thick cream. Or clotted cream, which is even nicer.
I keep losing my measuring spoons.
They make me want a scone now.
So
In the UK, it's always, do you put the cream on, the clotted cream on first, or do you put the jam on first?
Well, they trust you. I know you're ready. Goodness. I think, I'm not sure, don't quote me, but it's like Cornwall and the rest of the country differ because I'm not sure which way they like, but I like jam on first, cream on top.
Yeah, every
And eat the
every
two
region has
halves
its own
and split
reason.
them.
well,
And you eat the
I would
two
think if
halves
you put the
separately.
cream, it would soak up more cream. You could put more cream on it if you put cream first.
But then the jam runs off and
Oh, okay, so no, there's
It's a
no
mess.
perfect way.
She's
yeah.
got a good idea.
Unless you ask Queen Elizabeth.
You could always have two and have one each way, you know, one with a jam on top and one with a cream on top.
Yeah, you could always check and see how the queen has hers.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And
I
do
like
exactly
strawberries.
opposite, or
I
'cause
like
we're American.
jam, then cream, and then a couple of fresh strawberries. And a nice cup of hot tea, of course.
So is this usually eaten for breakfast, or is just
Oh no.
for tea in the
tea.
afternoon, or just any time?
Afternoon tea.
Afternoon tea, they call it a cream tea, I think.
Yeah, a cream tea or an afternoon tea.
And
In
do you ever
fact,
eat them hot?
Can I
or they're
show a
always-
photograph on here? It looks like it's. How do I show you a
And then-
photograph?
And Denise is here from Vancouver, so you can go to that big, what's the name of that big, the Empire Hotel or something in Vancouver, where you can have a cream tea for about $30 or something, or
Well, that's in
$40.
Wow.
Victoria,
Well,
the Empress.
That's the kind of style at the moment, and Scotland and England, I know, is going out for tea. It's kind of making a comeback. So everybody's going out and say, "Oh, get a tea here, and we'll go for tea there." And they've got these, you know, their 3-tier cake stand and all that kind of stuff. It's lovely.
Yeah, they can
Basically,
charge
you eat so
more when
much,
they make
you
it
cannot
sound
do
fancy, they can
Lovely
charge a
idea.
lot more.
You
Yeah.
eat so much you can't do anything for the whole rest of the day.
Sit down to tea. Can I show you a photograph and I'll show you this? I
Not
can.
right this
What?
second.
Can I do that? You tell me how to do that.
Let's see. Do you always eat these cool, or do you ever eat them straight out of the oven?
I don't, well, they've got to cool a little bit before you put the cream on, but they're nice warm. Even if it's like later on, if you've made them earlier, you can always put them in the microwave for a couple of seconds.
Oh, that sounds horrible.
No, it's fine. You know, it just takes the chill off.
So,
So,
Leslie,
yeah.
what flavor are you making for your second batch?
These are gonna be the cranberry orange ones.
Oh, cranberry is nice.
This is
So that's
the
more
butter.
your butter chunked up.
Yeah, so
That's
here's chocolate.
cranberry and orange, that's lovely.
Gotta find my pastry thing. Which is
Well, I'm so worldly. I had a Australian ginger beer while we were. It's the first time I ever had one from Australia.
And do you like it?
When I went to the international grocery and I got the
What cat?
orange flavored tofu, and I saw the ginger beer too, so I was like, hey,
Oh,
let me try it.
nice. Yummy.
Every time I go to international grocery, I try to buy something for like under $4.
That you've not had before.
Yeah. Yeah, Leslie, I'm definitely gonna have to look for my pastry.
Uh-huh.
So you can see how this kind of like comes up on it.
This is a big adventure for Orr, because he says he never can get the baking stuff to work.
Yeah, I'm a good cook, but I don't feel like, I'm a very good baker.
Well, I can bake, but I cannot bake a decent scone.
Well, I like this recipe. It seems to be very forgiving.
Right, I'm definitely gonna try them.
We'll find out when they're done.
It almost seems
Yeah.
more like, it seems like a more rich shortbread.
Yeah.
Well, it shouldn't be like shortbread. Shortbread's like a cookie. I was gonna say like a biscuit.
Powder
but
biscuit,
it's not-
really.
No, cookie kind of consistency.
Okay, so what, is anyone making a savory one?
Yeah, cheese scones are good.
What are you making?
Got
Susan?
some cheese. So I could make cheese or got
I-
some nuts.
I've got some fresh mozzarella. Can you put that in?
It's really good.
I
Or sun-dried tomatoes.
That would work.
They probably are.
Oh, sun-dried tomatoes and Italian herbs. That would be really good.
Yeah, with
Yeah.
some.
They're
Yeah.
good with sharper cheddar, and you can put green onions or chives in, and they look nice.
Wow.
So the
Wow.
more dry cheeses that won't melt as much, right?
Well, they still melt, but just the flavor of I like mozzarella wouldn't be very
Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
flavorful.
it's not strong. Yeah, it doesn't
But
have a strong
the
enough
sharper
flavor.
cheddar, even
Not
better than
cheesy
a
enough.
mild cheddar. Yeah.
Gianna or Parmesan or
So the University of Minnesota, the St. Paul campus is where we've got our agricultural lab or agricultural schools. And they make something, they have a meat and dairy sales room. And they make something called Santo Polino, which is a mixture of Gouda, so Gouda, and Parmesan. It's
Wow.
really yummy. Yes.
Wow.
that
Sounds
sounds
so good.
unusual.
I like
So
it.
I think if we could talk for one more minute, I think my alarm's gonna go off for the, we can stretch it out, pull it out and see how, that's part of it is like, I really like, I think I'd enjoy baking a lot more if I had a glass door
Right.
so I could like look at it. You know, I'm getting better. Like I've got these stainless steel pots and you can actually bake on the stovetop because they have the same temperature on the top.
And you could make triple scones then on your stove top.
Like I made lasagna in the stovetop with the pot. It's like, all right, let me switch the camera so it's pointing down so you guys can see me drop it as I take it out of the oven.
So is there any way to test it like the toothpick test to see if it's done and it comes out clean like you would a cake?
Yeah, exactly. You can use a toothpick or I use a fork sometimes. If I don't have a toothpick.
But
I
you want
think
it to come out.
looking at it, I think it needs to cook a little longer. But let's
You
see.
top
You have
on
an
the
oven,
bottom,
you have an oven thermometer, or
No,
top on the bottom.
you probably need to check the temperature of your oven. It may not be up to snuff.
it's brown on the bottom. Well, I don't know if you guys can see.
Listen to it.
Well,
Put your
taste
head-
it or
I flipped
Put
it
your ear
over.
down and listen. If you can still hear it cooking.
All right, there's my timer. Let's see what.
He's eating it before. Get some butter on there.
So do we have
So
someone
it's
from
crunchy on the bottom a little bit and then soft on the top.
Yeah, they should be like golden brown and like
There's a
a little bit
Put 'em
shredded.
back in.
thicker.
Put
I
them
think
back
it
in.
needs a couple more minutes. It's golden brown on the bottom, but the top is still pale.
It's pretty flat looking though. You have to put two of them together or
What's that?
It
you have
looks
to
like they
layer
should have,
them.
they
Eat
didn't
two-
rise too much.
eat
It
two
looks like they
together.
didn't rise.
Yeah, it's
Your scones look kind of flat, or
that's it's a little harder to get them to with the gluten-free stuff.
oh, but did you
Oh, it's
put
so
the
hard to
2
rise.
tablespoons of
Baking powder?
I
baking
did.
Have
powder?
baking powder on there.
Was it old baking powder like you talked about?
Possibly. I'm gonna start making a habit of writing with a marker on it when I open it.
Good idea.
Because sometimes, you know, you'll end up like I'll end up with like 4 things of baking powder sometimes.
okay, it looks like yours were a little higher than his.
Yeah, that's what mine look like. This pan is really hot. I gotta put down.
So. All right, apparently I need some cream and berries to make it look perfect.
Yeah.
Leslie,
Jam.
do you still have some
Preserves.
blueberries to like do a fancy plate and take a picture?
Absolutely. Fancy plates, doily.
Doily?
I'm
Up and
wondering if
saucer.
maybe you mixed them too much and instead of folding things in. Could that have an effect for the cooks that know what to,
It
to
can.
do this regularly?
But I mean, it is pretty fluffy, but it didn't look like it rised at all on mine. But
What kind
That
of
tasted
butter did
good.
you use?
it
Tasted
tasted,
good.
yeah, I took a little
That'd
peek.
be nice with coffee or tea or something.
I set the timer for another 3 minutes because you think you're standing right here, you'd think you'd remember. You're like, pop it back in. And then I
Right.
always forget. Especially
Yeah,
when
I
it's at that really high temperature.
I put mine in for 1 more minute just to get them a little bit more like a golden
Did you
brown.
set a 1 minute timer?
Yeah, yes, I did.
Okay, because
I
I
tell-
always
I-
say, oh, like
I-
I'm gonna put it in for 2 more minutes, and then
Yep.
I start doing stuff, cleaning, whatever, and then oh my goodness, we've got some charcoal pucks.
You just have to ask Alexa to set a timer.
So, all right. Any final questions? We'll wrap up. Unless you, oh, this was fun. I think I might actually. This one right here, I feel like is forgiving that you can do whatever flavor you really want and could make it pretty quickly. I think you could
Look
make
at Maureen's cute one.
Look at Maureen's, or
Looks like a cookie.
wow.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Oh, that
that's
looks
nice.
perfect.
Maureen, you're me.
Yeah.
That looks really good.
I had a job once where I had to serve scones every day. So in New
Not only-
Zealand, they call coffee break smoko. So I worked on an orchard and I had to give them scones every morning for smoko.
So do
Well,
you
the
have any
English are
tips?
the English are sort of half, I mean, the Canadians are kind of half English, so it's in their DNA a little bit, I think.
So Maureen, do you have, before we wrap up, have any tips, quick tips? I mean, if you had to make them every day,
You're muted there.
Well, I guess like I used cold butter. I mixed it in until it was small. The butter was small with the flour.
Yeah.
And when you add the liquid in, you don't mix very long. Yeah, that can make them hard.
That's
Just
what I
to-
was saying. That's what I was
I might
suggesting,
have
that maybe,
mixed it, but also I had the container on top of the stove and I think it warmed it up a little bit.
Mm.
and or likes to mix things once he gets going, so he could have over mixed it.
I'm
That's
sure
what I
yours will
was suggesting.
yours will taste good, Aura.
Oh yeah, I've already tasted it. They taste good.
As long as it tastes good.
Oh, yeah. There they are. Oh, well, I guess I should have the right camera so you can see.
Okay, mine are out.
All right.
But good.
That looks good.
Oh, nice. Those are beautiful.
They're made with
Yeah.
I used part whole wheat flour.
Nice. Yeah,
Those
whole wheat
are
flour,
great.
I like it sometimes. So
Are they sweet or savory? I forget. You said you were doing
Apricot and chocolate.
oh, okay.
And mine, even
Oh.
even though what do you call it?
Too
It was
dark
at a
on the
high
bottom.
temperature. It didn't heat up this place too much because it was a short time.
right. Yeah, that is a good thing.
All right. Any final words, Leslie?
No, I'm just cutting my cranberries.
But yeah, if you still have some blueberries, if you want to make a fancy plate and
I
take a
can.
picture afterwards, I might go dig out some blueberries myself just because
Yep. Let
they'll
me
be
get.
from last year, because this year I didn't get a chance to pick blueberries, but I freeze tons and tons of blueberries because it's one of my favorite like winter snacks. So,
Okay,
all
fancy.
right.
Did
I was
you
actually sweating
have-
more a couple weeks ago when we were cooking. So, all right, stop